How an Arsenal fan handles being top of the league.
What's wrong?
We're top of the league.
Why is that bad?
We keep winning.
Isn't that a good thing?
No.
Surely the more points we get...
The more points we get, the more hopeful we get. If we want to win the league, we can't be top of the league. If we're top of the league, someone's going to catch us.
So you want to be lower in the league?
Yeah, then we might win it.
As low as Tottenham?
Not that far down the table.
Okay. I still think we'll win the league.
Why are you saying that?
Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JessinoTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome to the match preview. We're going to be going through all the build-up before Arsenal versus Man City, which some Arsenal fans have dubbed the most important game in Emirates era history. I don't know about all that, but what I do know is that I am nervous. I am nervous, you guys. Like, I haven't felt this nervous in a long time. Usually when we play Manchester City, I don't feel nerves because usually I just I'm like, okay, they'll probably batter us and it's fine. And we're never really considered favorites in the game and we're never really near them in the league. So there's nothing really to play for. But this season, it feels different. There's an expectation for Arsenal to play well at home, get something out of this match and continue the title push. And Manchester City played against Aston Villa last night. And unsurprisingly, they look galvanized and a lot fresher and sharper, literally right before they're going to play us. So we're not going to be playing a rundown, overshadowed by all the things going on in the media about them, Man City. We're going to be going against a Man City that's going to be fired up for this match. They smell blood. If they go on and win at the Emirates, they go level with us on points, but ahead of us on goal differential. So that could really propel their title push and put us in a precarious situation, because if we do not beat Manchester City, that will be no wins in 3 matches in the Premier League, 4 in all competitions. And that's just not something that Arsenal, I think, can really do right now. We are in the middle of a weird period and we need a match to galvanize and push our season back on track. And we need to take advantage of the situation. I think whoever wins this match does end up having the upper hand in, the title push, because Manchester City will have played us one time. They will have went away from home in their situation, away from home, got 3 points and went ahead of us in the league with the same amount of games played. Whereas Arsenal, they would be able to say, okay, well, we beat Manchester City one time already at home. We can go to the Etihad and maybe get something, and we go 6 points clear. So whoever wins this game, I do think has the upper hand. And so I'm not calling it a title decider, but what I am saying is that it's a really important match. And I think that's what Arsenal fans are feeling. There's a nervousness and an anxiousness. I was at the Brentford match. I have to say that the atmosphere was not great. It was down. It was timid. It had an air of what's going on here, so the Emirates needs to be rocking. I think that's the one thing that we have in our corner is we have a fan base that up until this point has been very much so behind this group of players and pushing them forward. Last time we played Manchester City at home, we almost won that game. And if it wasn't for some unfortunate decisions and whether you pin that on the ref or the players, we probably would have walked away from that game with something, knowing that we played probably the best football that we played all season against the best team in the league. So we know we can do it. We know that Manchester City are not impenetrable or unbeatable or invincible or anything like that. But Arsenal have not looked like their regular selves. They have not looked like the team that got the 50 points and best ever points total, in history of the club and all that kind of stuff. Literally, we don't look like that team. And so I have seen kind of like an about face from the media as well. After the Manchester United game, which wasn't too long ago, by the way, we were the team that they felt like could do anything. Manchester City were in the rut. And if they go to the Emirates playing the way that they were playing, they were going to get killed by us. Now that we've looked a little shaky and, we lost to them at the Etihad and we lost to Everton and drew to Brentford, nobody has our back anymore. Nobody. You know, Martin Keown is starting to get a little bit shaky, saying he doesn't know if we can do it. Paul Merson looks a little bit shaky, saying he don't know if we can do it. Gabriel Bunglahor, I don't know if they could do it either. I expect Manchester City to win. So backs against the wall. Nobody has our backs. Nobody thinks we can do it. But I'll ask you guys, when's the last time you've seen Arsenal win a game backs against the wall, needing a win against all odds and getting it done? I think that's something that we've yet to see. But if you guys can name something, I would love that. I need a reference point. I need a reference point. Let's see what you guys are saying. Roman says, we can do it. If you guys see me looking to the side, my monitor's over here and it's bigger screen so I can see it better. Roman says we can do it if Spurs can do it. What I would say about, you know, the Spurs comparison is that Manchester City never beat Spurs at White Hart Lane or whatever you want to call it, toilet bowl, whatever. And Spurs play differently to us. They kind of bunker in a little bit more, play on the counter, and we tend to want to go toe to toe. And so I think, of course, Spurs did it. And so, like, logically, you would say, well, they're a worse team than us, so we can do it. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's just a completely different set of circumstances. You know what I mean? Let's see. Doyen Sola says Chelsea last season. Yeah, I mean, backs against the wall, that was kind of it. But if we're honest, Chelsea's season was pretty much over. And I would say the backs against the wall games last season were Spurs away and Newcastle away, and we didn't win either one of those. We went on to lose both of those. So this team hasn't done it yet. I think we definitely need to show that we have the mentality to get it done. And, you know, pretty football and nice patterns of play is not going to be enough. We need to win. You know, we need to win this game, not from I don't think the title is done, but I think there's a momentum shift that could definitely happen. And because Manchester City know how to win the title, I think if we kind of concede a little bit of that ground, we might find ourselves just kind of behind them the rest of the way. Prince Tutu says, even though Man City were great yesterday, it was more Aston Villa were just poor. That's a good way to think about it. I do think that, you know, Manchester City looked good, but two things can be true at the same time, that Aston Villa just weren't up for it and Manchester City were just too good for them, you know? And an early goal does really hurt your chances, especially away from home. And them giving up that early goal was just kind of like a nail in the coffin. Dobbs says, do you have a new camera? You're looking crisp. Yes, I did get a new camera. I have a whole new setup. I wish I could like show you guys. I can't really show you guys right now, but I have a monitor over here where I can like see everything, and I have multiple windows open. My laptop is in front of me. I have my ring light in front of me, and then a new Canon camera that I am trying to use. I told you guys for a while I've been trying to get my stuff up to date. Not only that, I've been trying to fix the internet issues. So it's not perfect. I pre-recorded something the other day and it was still a little bit laggy. There were some issues, but nowhere near as bad as it has been. So hopefully that works out most of the issues. And yeah, because I literally love you guys. And every single time the internet goes down, I'm just like, I'm letting you guys down. So yeah. Yeah. So Mohammed says, okay, good evening, everyone. See, that was a little laggy thing right there, but we're back. Let's see. Mafia Boss says, if we want to win the league, Wednesday's game is a must win. Tope says, we have been bottling for years since our last title win. We bottled all those seasons. Yeah, I mean, we haven't really been like a team known for winning in the Emirates era. Like beyond the FA Cups that we've won, in the league, we've been quite poor. And leagues and cup competitions for me are just completely different beasts. Cup competitions, like you see like somebody like Tuchel, very, very good in cup competitions, knows how to set up his team. It's kind of like a skill to know how to get through cup competitions. And we've done that pretty well, especially in the FA Cup, off and on. In terms of the league, we just haven't had the stamina. We never make the right decision. I think it's a combination of not having a big enough squad, you know, or enough quality throughout the squad, not reinforcing properly in January's most times, and not having the mentality to get it done. Arsenal, we don't really have that many excuses. Last season, we didn't get the job done, and everybody was like, well, we're out of all the cups, and we don't have Europe, so we should be able to make our benchmark. Albeit when the season started, the benchmark was actually just to get back into Europe. Pretty low benchmark for Arsenal Football Club, if we're honest. But it looked like, once we got about halfway, that we were certain to get into some form of Europe. But Champions League became like that bright, shiny light that was like, oh, maybe we could get that. And we missed out on it by like a couple of points. And it was Spurs that were able to kind of have that momentum through the end of the season and really get going and ramp up. They were able to, beat us. I think that we had the injuries, but like you could say that had we set up maybe a little bit differently and been a little bit more calm and not got a red card so early, it wasn't just the injuries. It was the fact that we just didn't have the composure in those difficult moments to get the job done, away to Newcastle, don't really show up in that game. And it was pretty much done from there. So, from my perspective, it feels very similar to that, but it's earlier on in the season now where we're in a position where everybody's kind of up on us now. Manchester United are not too far behind either. And Arsenal are the team that's faltering a little bit. And we need to turn this form around and just get a result. And so I hope that we've learned a little bit from last season. And we don't have injuries really to make an excuse this time. We're not playing away from home at Spurs, away from home at Newcastle. We're playing at our home turf against Manchester City with almost as good of a starting lineup as we could. Unless something happens between now and the match, we will have almost our first choice lineup except for Gabriel Jesus. So we don't really have the injuries to fall back on. And I just think it's a mentality thing. I think when you want to win, look at Everton. Everton had the mentality against us at home to overrun us at home because they had the fans behind them. They had the mentality, they had the setup correct, and we weren't up for it. So it's not really about the players that you have out there all the time. It's about what's going on up here. And I'm wondering if this team, off of the back of some poor results over the last couple of weeks, can regain the form that we saw against Spurs away, Manchester United at home, and put some of this narrative to rest that we're crumbling. Because I'm seeing that and it can't be. Like, it can't be. It can't be. Craig says, my starting 11 for Man City is Ramsdale, Tomiyasu, Tierney, Gabriel, Saliba, Partey, Xhaka, Odegaard, Trossard, Saka, and Nketiah. Of course, we'll do a full lineups and all that kind of stuff and kind of go through how the game could possibly go for Arsenal. But what I will say is, like, I would want to know why you made these choices to drop White and also drop Martinelli. Why those choices on this day? I think that's more important, is not what, it's why. Tony says, we are ahead of schedule per the club, but not ahead enough to reach our stretch goals. Yeah, it's one of those where I think unless there's a catastrophic collapse, we will have Champions League football next season. And so that will have been on the path. But I feel like the club kind of made moves in January that made me feel like they felt like the title is kind of within reach. It's something that we should be pushing for. And so although it's not something that I'm expecting, it's something that I expect us to really push for until the very end. If you don't beat Manchester City now, mentally, I'm not really sure where we go from there, because you have two difficult away matches as well, going away to Aston Villa and away to Leicester. And you can tell me that they're not good all you want, but those teams are not going to set up similarly to the way that they set up against other teams. They're going to know the formula. We're going to be all distraught because we haven't beat Manchester City. And so this is the turnaround game, because if you beat Manchester City at home, it sends them into a difficult position where they're kind of like, okay, this team is serious. And then also we can just kind of turn our form around. So yeah, we are ahead of schedule. And so I'm not expecting the title, but in order to push to the end, I think that's why this game is so important. And we kind of put ourselves into a situation kind of like last season, where we had a couple of games before this where we could have kind of given ourselves a better buffer. If you beat Brentford, you're not under as big of stress as you are today. And I think Brentford, for me, was more of the disappointment than Everton, because I can almost understand that, the way that game went. But against Brentford, that was so avoidable. So avoidable. So now we have to win. Let's see. Thab says, Rob Holding bullied the Norwegian. Yeah, I think Rob did okay against Haaland. I think he was a little shaky in the beginning in the FA Cup, was a little grabby and stuff like that. I would say that this is a really big game for William Saliba. And I expect William Saliba to start. Obviously, like, he's one of our best defenders. He's been really, really good this season, but his form has dropped off a little bit. There's a couple of our players that are not in form, and he's one of them. And it's so unfortunate because when he's on form, he's almost unplayable. But he's been a little weak in the duels, as of late. And seeing Manchester City going long to Haaland a lot against Aston Villa, pinging him first time in behind, their back line and making the defense make mistakes. I think they'll try to do something very similar against us. And so seeing that we're a little bit shaky doesn't really fill me with confidence. I don't think Haaland is the best back to goal center forward, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think that he's going to be like posted up like Tony, but those balls into the channels and behind our center backs that are going to make them have to make decisions, the corridor in between Gabriel and Zinchenko, the corridor between, Saliba and Gabriel, putting balls in between there and having Haaland running in at you does present a little bit of an issue when it doesn't feel like our center backs, especially Saliba, are at 100%. So they're going to have to be like flawless. Those balls that they were putting in behind, I was like, those are going to cause a lot of issues. That space in between the center backs and the goalkeeper where somebody has to make a decision, communication has to be perfect. You guys saw Colin Chambers yesterday. He was like for dead. He was out there sucking wind and looking like he had never played football in his life. He was struggling for air. And so I think they're going to try to do the same thing as us. So yeah, I don't see Rob Holding, doing anything in this game. And I understand that, we could say, well, if Rob Holding can do it, then Saliba can do it. But Saliba looks shaky, and I think they're going to try to exploit that. Frey, the Viking, says, isn't Haaland potentially injured for the Villa game? Who would you rather playing against, Haaland or Alvarez? Serious question. Based on what I saw yesterday, I don't want to see Haaland, but anybody who thinks Haaland's not going to play on Wednesday is smoking. Like, they probably just took him off as a precaution, and it's a really good, not a good thing, but to have a player kind of go out off of, they were winning 3-0. So they weren't under any threat. They didn't have to keep him on. They weren't under any pressure. He has a little thigh injury. He comes out, and they shoot him up with the magic juice and give him all the painkillers, and he steps out on the pitch against us on Wednesday. I just feel like it's a good opportunity for Pep to kind of have a little bit of mystery. Like, will he play Alvarez? Will he play Haaland? Can we get their guard down a little bit, thinking that they'll play against Alvarez, and then all of a sudden Haaland steps out there on Wednesday? I think that benefits them. I don't think it's as serious of an injury as people are making it seem. I would expect to see Haaland there. That's just it for me. Let's see. Lay says, why is Nketiah being blamed for Martinelli's poor form since December? Why should Arteta drop Nketiah when he helped us in big games? I think it's just, from the frontline standpoint, when you look at the hierarchy, most Arsenal fans would classify Martinelli and Saka above Nketiah. Nketiah is a backup to Jesus, and those are the starters, and there are good players. There are jewels. They're, our guys, our star boys, and Nketiah doesn't really have that same, level in terms of what Arsenal fans think. So the first thing you want to do is think, okay, I want to get all the best players out there no matter what. And so from a hierarchy standpoint, that would be try to get Trossard in there and then also have Martinelli out there. A lot of Arsenal fans are also obsessed with the idea that Martinelli is going to play center forward and, things like that as well. And so the natural person to drop would be Nketiah. But from my perspective, Nketiah, although he struggled in the last 2 games, I think he'll be okay against Manchester City. And And I feel like you need somebody that's been playing center forward for a little bit. You don't want to make too many changes. If you have Trossard and Martinelli, what my fear is too many changes. There's not enough continuity between those players. But what there isn't is there's no link between Nketiah and Martinelli. They're running into each other's channels. They're not really connecting. They don't pass the ball to each other. And so that's why I think that it's not really a Martinelli or Nketiah thing. It's a, do we make the change for Trossard instead of Martinelli, because he's suffering without Gabriel, Jesus, and he's also out of form. And so I don't really understand the Nketiah thing either. But I understand the thought process in terms of hierarchy. Gwenfist says, we are going to beat them, and prove haters are just haters because we are much better than City. Have faith, you guys. You know what? It's really funny because I do think that, like, Arsenal fans, like, we have went on such a journey this season in like 6 months. At the beginning of the season, we were just enjoying the team, how good they looked, the vibes, the goals that we were scoring. We looked better than we've ever looked in the Emirates, like, for a long time, maybe since 2015. It's been a long time since we looked that good. Winning games for fun, playing in the sun, and then we hit like December, and the pressure is starting to hit a little bit, and we've really talked ourselves into this title race situation. And so every single game is a must win. We've lost a couple of games, or we've dropped some points, which is natural. Every single team goes through bad patches. We're no different. We were virtually perfect for the first half of the season. Now we've hit a little bit of a rough patch, and now it's kind of like, when's the next time we're going to win? Can we win a game? I don't know what's going on, and we're not feeling like the team can persevere beyond this. And so I sense the level of, like, almost like a concession, like, we're not going to be able to win, blah, blah, blah. But this team will start winning again. We will start looking good again. It's just a matter of when. Can we cut this bad form short? Because bad form is bad form. Like, it happens to everybody, but it's just a matter of how long you let it sit. And I think this team, what they tend to do is they fall out of form, and then it lasts long enough for the pressure to kind of come off again. So we fall out of form, and then we go 3 or 4 games without winning a game. We go through this bad patch. Our opponents or our rivals kind of catch us up and go above us or whatever. And then we start chasing again. We're not that great in the position of being chased. I think we're better when we're the chaser. And so my fear is that we will kind of crumble enough where people go above us, and then we start chasing again. And that's kind of how we do things. So I think that's where, like, the negativity is coming from, is we haven't really seen this team persevere yet. This version of this team has not really won many big matches in terms of when it really mattered, not when the sun was shining, not when there was no pressure, but when the pressure was really on. And so it's just something we've yet to see, and that's why people are a little bit down on it. But this team can 100% can win this game. It's just a matter of, I think, one is, are the fans going to be up for it? Are they going to let the moment overtake them as well? And can this team just go back to being the team that we remember from just a couple of games ago? It was not that long ago. Manchester United was, what, January 20-something, 28th, something like that. It hasn't been that long since we played that match, Akil, thank you so much for your super chat, says, I just want to say the media has created the title pressure because City has no competition. 2 bad games and we played all right is being treated like doomsday. We are having an amazing season. Yeah, we are having an amazing season. Even if we lose to Manchester City, I won't change my feelings on that. Like, nobody would have thought we'd be anywhere near a title race. Nobody anticipated this. And the way that it's looking, we're going to have Champions League back at the Emirates next season. So it's fine. I think it's just when you start to believe, you just get into that mode where it's like, we have to have it. And that's what happens when you buy into things. Then it starts to become like you're really in the title race. And as we've watched Manchester City and Liverpool over the years, it has been the difference between, like, in these periods of time, how short can you cut the bad form out? Every single point matters. Every single game is a cup final. Every single match has so much pressure on it. And so it's hard to look at it from the wider angle when you are so bought into this title race. And it's not just the media, it's a lot of Arsenal fans have built this up as well. I don't want to put all the blame on the media, unless you consider Twitter fans and Twitter accounts and stuff like that and content creators the media. It's not just the media. The fans have built this up. They started talking about title challenge from like the 8th game when we looked really good. So we have to take some accountability as well, you know? Let's see. Alex says, in most of our games, Jesus played on the left flank and Martinelli in his place in the center. Their interchangeability just shocked all of our opponents. But that's the thing. It's like, I don't even think it's just like shock. It's just that fluidity is something that's missing. It's not something that, like, I feel like has been sussed out or anything like that. It's just now we're a lot more stagnant. We're in our positions. Martinelli has less options and Nketiah is quite stationary. And so when you have that fluidity, it's even hard to have that low block because it confuses people so much. What happened against Brentford is in the second half, we started to change positions. You saw Martinelli pop up on the right, Saka kind of going into the center, and we had a little bit more of that. And so we need that back. We need that back. The stagnation of our center for, like, our forward line is making it so much easier to defend, especially when they flood those channels. And so I think I get the, like, it shocked our opponents, but I also think it was just, we were just better. The fluidity was a part of our game, and we've lost a little bit of that. And if we get it back, teams will not be able to handle us because we're just too good. And then with Jesus, the difference between him and Nketiah is, remember when we played against Nottingham Forest at home? Those spaces that him and Odegaard were operating in were not much bigger than the spaces that we were operating in against Brentford. They just weren't. It was just, we had 2 number 10s basically out there moving, causing havoc, switching spots, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it just broke them down, and they just weren't good defensively. So yeah, it's, I think it's a combination of, like, you know, it's something that we need to get back. And then we also just need, like, a couple more dribblers in the team and some freshness. There's 170 of you guys in here, which is amazing. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. So yeah, now let's talk about I think the thing that most people want to talk about, which is, how do we line up against, you know, Manchester City? How do we get the most out of the group that we have? From my perspective, unless something drastic has changed, I feel like we'll have the exact same options that we had on Saturday, on Wednesday. So I don't anticipate Emile Smith-Rowe being available. And even if he was, what kind of impact could he have coming off of such a long-term injury? Reece Nelson as well. And so I think we're looking at the same bench and the same group. It's just a matter of whether or not Arteta makes any sort of changes to, like, zhuzh it up or maybe reward some good form. So everything here will probably be exactly the same. I think, like, Ramsdale for me has had a mixed season. I think he's been some of the reason why we won games sometimes, but I think his distribution has been spotty this season, where it was a lot better last season. And in moments where we desperately need some composure back there and some organization, he has fallen short. Against Manchester United, the goal that they, Lisandro Martinez goal, I think that was for me, a goalkeeping error. You could even maybe say the Aston Villa goal, goalkeeper error. There's just been kind of like this mix up when we're defending set pieces now, where we didn't have before. And I think the goalkeeper is so important for that. People are blaming the defenders the most, but I've seen a lot of Ramsdale flailing and kind of having a mare back there. So there is that. Okay, so we need to switch this around. Again, like we already said, William Saliba is going to be so important in this match. He has to be on it. My fear for him is that he's having his first season with Arsenal slump, and we've seen all of our defenders kind of go through it. This is not a good time to have it. Not a good time to have it. A really good defender, obviously going to be one for the future, but he's going through a really difficult period. Now, from a right back perspective, I do think Ben White was pretty poor in the first half against Brentford. His form has went down since Manchester United at home. He just hasn't been the same player. And in the second half, he was better. But one of my frustrations with Ben White is when he gets into the final third, what opponents are starting to do is they're saying, we don't want Saka and Martinelli to get joy, and we don't want them to get the ball. So we want to task Arsenal's fullbacks with doing some of the creation out on the wings. And so if I'm Arsenal's opponent, I'm very happy to see Zinchenko and Ben White on the ball in those wide areas, because up to this point, they have not made good decisions in the final third. Ben White in particular, for me, gets into these wide areas because Saka does such good work, and Odegaard, they do such good work with their rotations, and then he gets free on the overlap instead of hitting it low and hard for cutbacks. And those types of balls are the type of balls that players hit into their own net. Those are the types of balls that cause chaos and confusion. Those floated crosses into the back post have no speed on them. They have nothing really on them to make them dangerous, and well-organized sides with 10 defenders back behind the ball are going to easily head those out. And so the decision-making in the final third from our fullbacks has not been that good. Now, the other option is Tomiyasu, and I think, the issue with Tommy is that although I do think that he's a better defender 1v1 than Ben, I'm not sure that his decision-making in the final third is that much better. I think he's more, he doesn't take as many risks, and, he's a little bit just more simple, keeps it simple 1-2s, which could be beneficial, but I'm not quite sure that I'm like, yeah, that's going to be the difference in the final third. Now, playing against Jack Grealish, the diver, is going to be hard because he's somebody that's going to try to get you to commit, make a mistake, get the pen. Maybe that's where Tomiyasu would be a better option than Ben, who right now I don't think mentally is just is ready for that type of game. I don't really want to see anybody get frustrated with the diving. We need to keep cool heads back there, and we just don't need to be diving in and making bad decisions. Ben White dove in on Rashford and was on that yellow card very early against him. Jack Grealish is worse than Rashford in terms of getting players booked and getting early fouls and things like that. So that's probably why I'd make the change, is just to get a little bit of freshness, a good 1v1 defender, a calming presence back there. We have lost some of our composure, and maybe Tommy would be a better option from that perspective. Zinchenko, my fear with him in this game is not the fears that I had in the low block. A lot of people have went kind of really on Zinchenko, and now they're starting to say Kieran Tierney should play, which is a madness, right? But Zinchenko, my fear is the emotional side of this match. Playing against your old club, knowing that we're under pressure, I think his passion is good when we're doing good, and his passion can be a hindrance when we're not doing as well. And so my fear for him is that he'll come out here and make a mistake or be too fired up to the point where he's not making the right decisions. Calm heads will prevail in this game. And so Zinchenko obviously plays. We'll have more space, more avenues to hit them, and more, there'll just be more space, so he doesn't have to try to force those small passes into in the box. But he cannot get caught on the ball. He cannot overcook everything. That is kind of my fear with him, is overcooking it, almost trying to show that he's good and all that. We don't need that. We just need you to be the Zinchenko that we knew from a couple of games ago, where you were our number one player. It's so weird how just a couple of games can turn everybody's thing on. It could just turn everything. So Zinchenko was man of the match against Spurs and Manchester United. Against Everton and Brentford, he has really struggled against those low blocks. And emotionally, I just think he's let us down a little bit. So obviously he plays. There's absolutely no reason to bring in Kieran Tierney. I don't understand that. I get the overlapping fullback situation, but it's a no for me. Let's see. Tony says, exactly the same lineup, Tommy, for White would be okay, but Nelly is the right profile versus City instead of Trossard. City will pin us back, speed up front will keep them honest. Speed up front will keep them honest. I guess my feeling on this would be a little bit from when I saw Trossard play against City in the cup, the reason why I thought that he'd still be a good option is because he's not as slow as people make him out to seem. But besides the tactical aspect of things, where if there's more space, we'll have Martinelli will cook and all that kind of stuff, I just feel like form is form. And if you ask me right now, if I had somebody running towards goal and they had one chance to put it in the back of the net in a game of high pressure, who would I prefer, Trossard or Martinelli right now? I would say I'd prefer Trossard, just because he's a big game player that scored a lot of goals against the big teams. He's just scored a goal against Brentford, and he looks sharper than Martinelli. He's not as slow as people make it out to seem. And I get the aspect of like the speed, but they're going to have Kyle Walker on Martinelli. You know, Kyle Walker is no slouch. And so I'm not really, it's not Cancelo. It's going to be Kyle Walker. And so I'm just thinking, if we get one opportunity, we have a couple of chances, who do I want those chances to fall to? The guy in form, the guy not in form, despite tactics. But I understand the tactical aspect of, we want the fast player out there, but I actually want the guy in form out there too. It's not like Trossard has not played against these big teams before and done a good job. So another player that has to have a massive game, obviously, is Thomas Partey. This is the Rodri-Thomas Partey derby. I don't think we've seen enough of those two playing against each other because Thomas Partey has been not fit. But I just want to like read some of the stuff out to people really quick. Let me just find it if I can. Because as bad as I thought Thomas Partey was against Everton, he was like really good against Brentford, to be honest. He had, I don't know if I can find it now. It was like a lot. It was really good. He won like almost all of his duels. 90 minutes played, 105 touches, 78 of 87 passes completed, 100% successful dribbles, 12 final third passes, 10 ball recoveries, 8 out of 10 ground duels won, 5 chances created, and 2 out of 3 tackles won. So although we did not win the game, he was outstanding against Brentford. And so he's going to be so important because he's going to have such a big game ahead of him against the likes of Gundogan. And I think De Bruyne is going to kind of have a free role and going to kind of go to the right-hand side. He likes that right half space and stuff like that. So that's going to be an area that they're going to be able to exploit against us, because that's our weak area, is over on that right-hand side, like on their right, our left, when Zinchenko is too far up. But in terms of like Thomas Partey is going to be not really going up against Rodri, but, you know, 2 of the best DMs in the league. The game could be won and lost by those 2 players and how they keep their team from conceding goals and keep them ticking and all that kind of stuff. And so he was massive, and I expect him to have a big game. He's our big game player. As much as people are like, we don't have leaders, we don't have this. Thomas Partey may not be a leader, but he's definitely one of our better big game players. You know, against Manchester City last season at home, he was good. Against Liverpool at home, he was good. And so I expect that theme to kind of roll on. Now, the other kind of position that people have been talking about is Granit Xhaka at left 8. And I do think it's kind of, you know, it's more apparent now that he's just not he's not getting as many goals. He's not getting into the final third. He's not affecting play up there. He's a little bit more of the Xhaka that we knew from last season than the Xhaka that we knew at the beginning of this season. And so people are looking at his position like, is there something that we can do? The reality is that Arsenal have just never really addressed this position really. And we're finding the same issues that we had last season. We have Fabio Vieira, who for me just hasn't really acclimatized to the Premier League just yet, and he needs more playing time and needs more time to cook. I think Fabio Vieira is a next season player, to be honest. I just don't really see him being the type of player that's going to come in and make a huge difference for us right now. And then you don't have Emile Smith-Rowe. You don't really have anything different to put in that position. And we've been kind of crying, you know, for this a lot, you know, a player that can get goals and be a little bit more robust in there, give us more going forward. And so Granit has suffered a little bit, I think, from not having Gabriel Jesus. Like those combinations on the left-hand side have been a little bit weak. But I expect him to be fine against Manchester City because it's going to be a little bit more of like our traditional game, not really against a low block. But this is still a position that we need to improve upon. Even though he's played well, it's just obvious that we've needed another big midfield signing. And they're talking about the Rice and they're talking about this person, that person. We need a big midfield signing. And because they kind of fluffed it a little bit with Jorginho and kind of are not going to do the CDM route, I don't think left 8 is something that has got to be addressed in the summer. But in terms of this game, I expect him to be fine. He does look a little bit on the tired side, a little bit, just a little bit lost when we're playing against those deep blocks, but he's going to have to suck it up because we need 3 midfielders in this game, not 2. Odegaard, expect him to do Odegaardy things. It's going to be Rodri trying to snuff him out. The most infuriating thing about Rodri is that he never gets called for those cynical fouls, and I expect him to be doing loads of those, floating over to our right-hand side, trying to stop Saka and Odegaard from making those connections. We need to be loud. I'm not going to the game, but the one thing that I will say from like the fans' perspective is every single time Rodri pulls a shirt, does a cynical foul, makes a bad tackle, we need to be louder than ever, try to influence the ref. That is what home cooking is all about. We need to be getting the calls. It's our home. You're not going to come up in here with those cynical fouls doing whatever the hell you want to do. And so he's going to be doing it. Obviously, the blueprint is to kick the shit out of Odegaard and Saka and then see what happens. But we have to persevere beyond that. And some of that is going to be on the fans to be getting loud and, and getting on top of them and making them make mistakes. We also really haven't, like in the last couple of games, made defenders make mistakes in the box, in and around the box. We're not getting enough penalties, not enough anything like that. And so we have to commit the defenders and make them make mistakes, kind of like how Jack Grealish is going to try to do to us and Mahrez is going to try to do to us. Those players are going to try to commit our defenders and make them make a decision. And I think because it seems like Martinelli and Saka have been a little bit afraid to take on their defenders because they don't see the same space that they've been seeing in previous matches, they have to be brave. Saka and Martinelli, if they're the ones who start, they have got to be brave and be willing to take on their man. Ake did a really good job on Saka in the FA Cup. And my fear is that like Saka will be nullified just a little bit by having like a really good 1v1 defender. Like Saka will eat any fullback alive, but kind of like the Ake types, like those types they're more difficult to deal with. And so Saka, he's going to need to be brave and still take him on, make him make decisions. And the thing about taking on your fullback all the time is like, you may not get past them the first 5 or 6 times that you try, but it's going to be really, really difficult to like stay that committed and that concentrated the entire match. And you will make a mistake eventually. So I want to see bravery from those players. Something happened. Are you guys okay? Why am I seeing people needs to block people? Are people abusing people in here? No more. No, you guys don't be like, don't you guys be normal. Okay. We're talking football. No reason to be rude to each other. Okay. John says, bro, got pocketed by Ake, but Ake is a really good defender. So when people are like, oh, Saka got pocketed, he got pocketed. Like how many times does Saka get pocketed? It's good defenders and Ake is no slouch. So I get that. It's like, oh, we want to be so negative on our players the one time that they don't do well in a game, but also the FA Cup, we were playing on definitely a lower level. That was not how we play all the time. Palom says teams are doubling up on Saka and Martinelli on the wing. Arteta's got to figure out a plan B for that. I hear that. And also got to contain Mahrez on the wing. I mean, their right-hand side is where we're going to see a lot more. Like, Saka is so reliable in terms of coming back. Like, I think he'll come back and help Ben White / Tomiyasu in those defensive situations with Jack Grealish and stuff like that. My issue is on the other side with Zinchenko. They know him so well. And so they're going to try to exploit that side. And I do see them pressing him a little bit as well because he does seem to be a little bit like methodical on the ball, thinking. And so that Mahrez Kevin De Bruyne link up on that right-hand side is going to be something that we have to really watch. And maybe that's where Xhaka is going to come in handy, is because he'll be doing some of that defensive dirty work and stuff like that. But yeah, it's going to be hard to contain them because they just have that quality, and they know how to like draw people out and make the right decisions at the right time. Like, this is going to be like a very high level match where Arsenal need to be 100% on it. Tony says City won't double up on the wings. I think that's a really good point, is that City are not really the type of team that are just going to like, you're not going to really see Jack Grealish, I don't think, trying to do too much defensive work, or Mahrez. Those players are going to stay up. And if they try to commit their midfielders wide to try to double up on our wingers, then we'll have central dominance, which is not what you want when you have Odegaard in the team. So I don't see them doing a lot of doubling up, like you said. I do think that we'll have a lot of 1v1 type of battles, and that's where it's going to be up to our wingers to be brave and continue to take them on, over and over and over again. They will eventually make a mistake. Let's see. So moving forward, obviously, these are like the two positions that people are really looking at. I don't see us deviating from Nketiah. I think 2 bad games where the team was kind of on a lower level anyway. Like, we have to be careful about pinpointing just certain players when the whole team is not playing well, or the whole team has kind of dropped the level or whatever. I don't think the last 2 games have informed me of anything regarding Nketiah. Nketiah is a good enough backup. We obviously need Jesus back, but I wouldn't move him or drop him now. He's been really good for us. And so that's not something that I would do. But on left wing, this is where the decision, I think, people feel like will be made. Now, if you ask me what I think Arteta will do, I think he'll play the exact same team he's been playing. And, it's just, from my perspective, it's just, I get that we don't have a big squad and we're really missing a couple of big players that could do some of the rotating. But in general, whether we have a bench or not, Arteta does not do enough rotation for me. And I think we play players too much, and we try to play them through their bad form, and we end up losing games in the midst of that. And so I would start Trossard, and then bring in Martinelli like we did against City at the Etihad. It wasn't bad. It didn't kill anybody. It wasn't the end of the world. Trossard was good and actually probably should have had a couple of assists, but Nketiah fluffed his lines a couple of times. Like, he really should have put some of those balls in the back of the net against City in the FA Cup. And I just think when you see somebody that's kind of gaining a little bit of something, like, you have to reward them for something. And I feel like in our team, the way that Arteta operates, I don't see much of a carrot for the subs to kind of look forward to, if they know no matter how well they play, the starters are going to be the starters. And it's just something that, from my perspective, I don't love from Arteta. It's just not my thing. Like, I feel like you need to gently rotate sometimes and do things differently. But, I expect to see the same team, but I feel like it might be a mistake. Ash says Trossard has earned enough to start versus Villa, though. But do you think Arteta will do that? Because I also thought that, like, okay, so he could have started him against Brentford. He could have started him against Everton. I don't even think that. I think the same team will just continue to start. We never see rotation until it's enforced by injury. You guys know that, right? When's the last time you guys seen a sub or rotation that was not enforced by injury? Let me know. And I get that you get your momentum with your starting 11, but sometimes you also need to reinvigorate the squad. Ash says, I think he can't play Gabby 3 times in a week when we have a genuine alternative. We'll see. I wouldn't bet money on it. Sin says, I think he just doesn't have the same confidence in the rest of the squad, though. But how do you build confidence with the rest of the squad if you don't use them? I don't. Trossard is not an unknown quantity. He is somebody that we've seen play in the league. That's why we got him. And so I don't really understand why you'd be like afraid to use somebody who also just scored their first goal for Arsenal. Maybe I don't see like Jorginho and Kivior, like those are 2 players that I only see really playing maybe in Europa League. I don't really see them playing that many minutes. And when Emile Smith-Rowe comes back, maybe he'll trust him. But yeah, right now it's looking a little bit like I'm just going to go with these guys until the wheels fall off. Mad Rambo says it was Jesus. Zinni was on and off from injury. Okay. Mark says, I drop Nketiah. Honestly, his finishing is not great. Trossard on the wing and Martinelli up front, best players on the pitch. So when you say like Nketiah's finishing is not great, then how is he one of the best goal per minute ratio players in the league then? Like, here's the thing. It's like, I think we go too far sometimes. Nketiah had 2 bad games and now his finishing is poor. But his finishing is actually one of his best traits. And it's the reason why, I mean, we won against United. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not really connecting with his finishing is not great. Based on the metrics and statistics, he's one of the best, like, goal per minute ratio strikers in the league. Moving 2 pieces like this and doing Trossard on the wing and Martinelli up front, for me, is a little bit galaxy brain. The idea that Martinelli can play down the center right now, for me, is a little bit of like a myth because we haven't really seen it. And best players on the pitch, I get that. I would say on form players on the pitch. Martinelli is still one of our best players. He's out of form. So, like, I don't know. I get what you're trying to say here, but I don't really understand his finishing is not great. That's his best quality. And Nketiah just had 2 bad games, like the rest of the team. Diallo says, Mikel will not drop Nelly, trust me. And he won't drop White either. Ben played much better against Brentford. In the second half, he was not good in the first. And again, in the final third, he has got to figure out, like, he's done so well to learn how to play right back and get the overlap going. But the next step for Ben is composure in the final third and finding his man. Those little clip balls to the back post ain't doing nothing. Ash says Nketiah's best games were against Tottenham and United. Trust him. Mafia Boss says Trossard should start ahead of Martinelli. For me, it's just a form thing. It's not a who's a better player thing. I think Martinelli is one of our best players and has been for a while. And so from my perspective, it's just about not continuing to play players that are out of form. McKinn says, I would normally agree with you, but this game is more suited for Martinelli. Trossard will also be more dangerous coming on late in a game when City are tired. I mean, isn't that the opposite, though? Like, Martinelli would be the better player to bring on when City are tired because he kind of runs. But I get what you're saying. I get that tactically this feels like the perfect game for Martinelli, but I'm going with the guy that, you know, is on form to score a goal, you know? Let's see. Boy says, no one is going to debate that Jesus is a better creator or that Balogun might be a better talent, but you have Nketiah now. There's little to swap for him. Exactly. I just don't see that as the position to be looking at. Lynn says, I would like to see Tommy play in Saliba's position on Wednesday and then Martinelli through the middle and Trossard on the wing. I hear that. Sparky says Zinchenko playing inverted every time must be considered when judging Martinelli. Okay. Well, I mean, this is why, like, I can't wait for March to come, because I feel like March is when, you know, we'll have Jesus back and Reece back and ESR back, and then you have different options, because ESR, I think, you know, could be useful, you know, as well out there on the wings and maybe even centrally. You have different options, but I don't know. We weren't really complaining about Zinchenko being inverted. And, well, Zinchenko is actually, maybe it is something that needs to be looked at, because now that I'm thinking about it, Zinchenko was in and out until after the World Cup. And then now Martinelli is struggling a little bit and we're playing super inverted with Zinchenko. And so maybe there is something to that. But, you know, I don't know. Tony says, to be fair, I don't have huge feels against starting Trossard. I'd prefer Nelly, but both are good options. Gallo says City struggles with rapid ball carriers. Pep will be scared of Nelly more than Leo. Fair enough. That is a really good point. That I think the game that really like shook me was Newcastle versus Manchester City early on in the season. And I think like you just saw that like they have so many ball progressors. Joe Linton, they have Willock, they have Alexei Maximin, they had Isak, I think was playing at that point as well, and Almiron, and all these guys were like quick, direct players, and City just couldn't handle it. And so maybe that is the reason. Like I think Martinelli's going to start no matter what, but I'm just wondering if he has enough confidence to do it. You know, I'm worried about his confidence level, and that's more what it is than anything. I understand the tactical reasons. So yeah, this is what I would go with, but I anticipate seeing the exact same lineup that we've seen, and hopefully these guys are ready to do the business. There's 250 of you guys in here, which is amazing. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now I want to get into some predictions. I want to know what you guys think in terms of like what's going to happen, you know, who's going to score, are we going to win, are we going to turn around our form, are we going to continue this crap form? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, and I'll take a little swiggy. You guys know me. I love my champagne. Okay, I don't even have to celebrate anything. Like, hello, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Yule says 3-2 win. Jordan Hill says 3-2 Arsenal. So we're seeing games or goals, lots of goals. Oh, kind of like Manchester United, maybe. Alex says 3-1 win. Shapiso says 3-1 Arsenal. FC says 2-2. David says 2-1. Jordan says 3-2 Arsenal. Mad Rambo says 2-0 Arsenal. Keenan says 1-1. Boo. Boy says 3-1 Nketiah hat trick. Alvarez scores 1. Thab says 3-1 Arsenal and 2-0 Arsenal in April. We are winning this league. I like the confidence. Ash says 2-2 draw, which is fine. Marco says I'm going 2-1 Arsenal, trying to put good vibes out. Gold Coast Black Star says 2-1 Gunners. O'Shane says 2-1 Arsenal. Steve says a draw for me is okay. Football Capo says 2-1 with Ars with Brawl. So the one thing I will say about this is like, well, actually, let me check the poll before I do this as well. Let me check the poll, see what you guys said. 61% win, 22% lose, 16% loss. So I think we're pretty confident, which is good. And that needs to really resonate in the stadium. I think I cannot stress that enough, is that the boys need the backing from the fans and the loud noise and all that kind of stuff. So for me, obviously, like the win is what I want. Obviously, all of us want us to win. I think this is a don't lose game too, though. Like, I think if you can't win, don't lose, and don't, you know, give up an early goal, you know, none of that sillies, you know, kind of stuff. It's a really fine balance between make sure you don't lose it, but also play with bravery. You know, I think sometimes when you're so afraid to not lose that you end up losing anyway because you don't take any risks, or you wait too late to start taking the risks. And so I think we're at home. And so most of the times at home, even when we're not playing amazing, we're able to get the result anyway. We're unbeaten at home. We've only dropped points a couple of times. And so I think we can look at this as a game where we need to be confident and play our way, but also just don't be stupid. So don't fall into the trap of Grealish diving. Don't do anything silly early. Don't give up a penalty, those types of things. But we have been good at, you know, at home, being able to push it over the line, even when we're not playing 100%. And so I think that will continue to be so. I just wonder what it'll be like if we were to concede early, because if it goes silent in there and isn't the same as it was when Saliba hit the ball in his own net, or when Manchester United scored, I do think we'll struggle. But yeah, it's a don't lose game. It really is. And I think most of the games against your rivals are don't lose. If you can't win, do not lose, because then you stop them from progressing, but you also, you know, do a little bit for yourself. So don't lose. And then you look forward to Aston Villa, and we still have a game in hand. So it's a difficult one, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a lot of nerves, and a lot of people hoping to see the team that we saw a couple of weeks ago and not the guys that have just shown up now. Let's see. Christopher says, focus on the set pieces. Yeah. Obviously, one of our low points right now is set piece defending. And so I highlighted that on our 5 things that we learned against Brentford, is that this is not a blip. This is a thing. Not sure what happened with Nicholas Jover, but I think even attacking wise, offensively on set pieces, we've fallen away just a little bit. So when's the last set piece goal that we scored? Was it against Brentford? I'm not sure. So yeah, it's one of those where, you know, people are going to be looking at that and trying to hit balls into the box in dangerous areas and see if we can handle it. And I think, again, that's Ramsdale, Saliba, Ben White, Gabriel, these guys have got to get their shit together. Against Brentford, there was a lot of bickering and finger pointing and stuff like that. And I'm just like, suck it up. Stop feeling sorry for yourselves. And don't give up silly fouls. You know, don't get sucked into that. City scored a very early goal against Aston Villa with a front post header from Rodri. We don't need that happening to us. Boy says the form was never going to last forever. I wish Arteta would recognize and adjust, though. He just has, as good as Arteta is, and trust me, he's very good. Like, this is not me saying like he's crap or anything like that, but I see a lack of like tactical flexibility, and I'm still questioning the management in terms of managing the squad and, you know, keeping players fresh and knowing when to change it and when to, you know, keep it the same. And it's a long season, and we still haven't even gotten to Europa League again. And I'm seeing the team running into a wall. And so he needs to, I don't know what he needs to do, but I think I would like to see a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more light rotation before it becomes us hitting the wall. Akin says, if we concede early, we can't panic. Got to keep the faith and keep believing. Dude says, would you start Trossard next game or stick with Martinelli? I would start Trossard. Let's see. Amira says, fans will need to do their part. Watching on TV felt like Saturday was the first time I could feel the nerves in the stadium. It needs to be a fortress. Yeah. And people are like, well, every single big game, it's huge. Like, everybody shows up and does their part. But what I will say is that, you know, from my perspective, Brentford was a big game, and the fans kind of did let the team down a little bit. They did. So yeah. O'Malley says Arteta has trouble changing the starting lineup. Remember, he persisted with Willian and Laka until his hand was forced. And that's kind of what it is he sticks with it until it breaks. And then we have to rebuild again. And so it's just a blind spot for him. And it's something that I don't love. But it seems to be like at parts of our season, that's where we start to really struggle. Lynn says, Jess, but do you still feel that the bench is still too short of experience? It is, but at the same time, what we're talking about is not switching older, more experienced players for young players. We brought in Trossard, who has experience, you know, and he would add more experience, big game experience to the side. And so that's what we're really talking about. Tomiyasu and Ben White, I don't think there's an experience gap there. So, but I do think that it's a little bit of like, especially when it comes to midfield, we haven't really addressed it. I'm not sure why we're still like the only team that doesn't have like 3 or 4 really good prime age midfielders. We have Thomas Partey and Xhaka, and then we have Fabio Vieira, and that's like it. So I don't really understand like why we can't bring in another player that could shake things up. It seems like that's what they want to do in the summer. But again, this is something that should have been done years ago. And so, yeah, I would like to see more of that, but it seems like we're waiting until we get into Champions League to do it. But it's midfield is usually kind of where we suffer in hard parts of the season. We can't switch it up. We're not getting enough goals from it. Thomas Partey gets injured. So yeah, but in terms of the experience part of it, yeah, we are a little bit short of experience on the bench, except for Jorginho, but Trossard has experience, and can't be any less experience than the boys that are out there. You know, so Pete says, regardless of pundits, Arsenal will win comfortably. Hope we do. Martin says, Jess, do you think there's any chance you drop out of the top 4? No, not really. We are like 11 points clear of the 5th place team. They can't win games consistently. and we're a better team than those teams. So no, I don't think we're top of the league right now. Why would we be thinking about falling out of the top 4? Boy says, I need more quality on the bench. Xhaka is our best guys in the bench player that we want Jorginho to be. Tony says, Jess, what's your record at the Emirates this season? 1 win, 1 draw, and 1 loss. No, 1 win, 1 draw, no losses. I went to Nottingham Forest. I did that specifically to make sure that I went to a game that we won. Hello. And then I went to the Brentford game and we drew. I've never seen us lose at the Emirates. To be fair, I haven't went to a lot of games, but I've never seen us lose. I saw us draw to Brentford and I saw us beat Newcastle a couple years ago. So yeah, maybe I'm a good luck charm. Probably not. New Life, New Faith says, love your channel, Jess. Nice to have a fellow girly gooner who knows what she's talking about. Keep up the great work, Katie. Thank you so much, Katie. I really appreciate that. I'm glad you guys love the channel. I love you guys, obviously. 8 lakhs says top 4 is guaranteed, but lose on Wednesday and even second is not guaranteed. So yeah, before we go too far into like all the doomsday stuff, let's just see what happens on Wednesday. Right now, I'm feeling very, very nervous. I am looking like this right now. Hello. But it's not the end of the world if we don't win the game, but it does put our title hopes in a little bit of a precarious situation because we know City are, they know how to win it under pressure. And so giving up ground now, I do think would be significant, but it's not the end of the world. And I know if we lose, everybody will lose their minds and all that kind of stuff. But we put ourselves in this situation by not really taking care of business against Everton and Brentford. And so quite similarly to the situation that we were in at the end of the season last season, we kind of have to come up with the goods. And so hopefully we do. There's 220 of you guys here. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're going to go ahead and get out of here. My prediction is 2-1 Arsenal, hoping for the win. I think Nketiah and Saka will score. And the one thing I will say about Saka is I think he's the kind of player that will drag us over the line. In most of the games that we played this season that have been a little bit tight and a little bit like we needed somebody to kind of save us, Saka's been that guy, and he is our talisman. He is our star. And so I think he'll be the difference in the match, and he'll score the winner, hopefully. Like I said, make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel on the way out. And we will talk after Arsenal versus Manchester City. Go to the Football Terrace now. They're doing the top 6 show. I won't be on it, but it's great fun. Make sure you guys join. Bye, y'all.